welcome to the ultimate guide to Endgame. Now, let's go over the basics. Endgame is going to include everywhere from 5th to 9th zone. It's where you're going to earn placement points and you're going to constantly be challenged and make decision after decision, and it could be the right or wrong one. And if we break Endgame down, it's going to break into 3 separate layers. It's going to be high, mid, and low. It's highly congested. Starting at 5th zone, you could have upwards of 50 players and then not decrease down below 30 players until after 7th zone. And typically you'll see the zone move across water or change elevations. So we're going to see lots of eliminations and lots of players fall during end games, and this is where you get the big points and you possibly win tournaments. Make sure to hang around to learn how to play each of the 3 different layers. Let's start off by talking about 5th or 50-50 zone. It's called 50-50 because half the zone starts out in the storm, the other half starts within the safe area. So it creates a ton of congestion within the 50% of the zone that starts within the safe area. Most, if not all, of the teams are going to wind up in that area, and that congestion is then going to lead the rest of the game to play out accordingly. You have most of the players layered on top of each other, and this is truly where endgame begins. After 5th zone, you get the moving zones. 6th zone through 9th zone move through areas of the storm that were not previously in the safe area. This causes every team to move with the safe area in order to avoid taking storm damage. Now, we can see how these moving zones develop. There's going to be 3 distinct layering areas. That's going to be mid-ground, high ground, and low ground. And we can see as the zone moves, there's players tarping, moving through, trying to navigate through builds, and lots of congestion and fights happen within these games because the zone is moving, shrinking, causing engagements between teams and players. So let's talk about the different layers here and how each of them can be played. Let's talk about the 3 different layers generally, then we'll go in, show some clear examples and some tips and techniques you could use on each layer in order to improve your success. Low ground is going to be your bottommost layer. This is where you're going to be able to eliminate a dimension, as the bottom of your tarp or your tunnel is going to be the ground. This helps you because it simplifies the game and you don't necessarily have to worry about someone breaking in below you. The advantages of this are exactly that. You don't have to worry about someone breaking in. You can drop players down below on the layers above you, and you don't really have to worry about all of the mobility items that cause people to fall or jump into your boxes, because on Ultimate Low, you're typically going to be buried. On the other hand, being buried is going to be a problem when you have to go up elevation or if you want to use your mobility. Yes, shockwaves break a couple of layers, crash pads also break some builds, but if you're buried underneath multiple different layers, that mobility is not going to help you, so you're going to have to use the outsides of the zone or find free areas to push yourself through in order to use that mobility. It's going to mostly be tarping in low ground, but you can save on the bottom, possibly some side builds in your tunnel if you use the outside. Mid-ground is the most dangerous. You have players to your left, to your right, above, below you, but it can also be the most beneficial because it gives you the ability to play either low or high, or stay in your middle ground layer if you so choose. The options are open. Additionally, this is going to be the layer where you can use your mobility items, crash pads, and shockwaves, as well as bouncers, to their fullest ability. The only issue is you have to worry about getting beamed while you're flying through the air with your mobility items. You're not going to get buried like you would on low ground, and you have that flexibility to really move however you want. Typically, playing front side of the zone on mid ground is going to wind up being your best bet. And you can also play the sides, as they're going to be more free than the dead middle of a moving zone. High ground is going to have the biggest risk reward in the game. Playing high ground gives you the ability to come out with a very high kill victory royale. But at the same time, you're going to get contested, most likely by multiple teams throughout the game. Playing high ground starts around 5th zone and then continues throughout the rest of the moving zones. If you play high ground and are uncontested, typically that's going to be a free win for you. Other games, 3, maybe 4, sometimes 5 different trios try to shockwave up and take high ground. So what you need to do is have different layers with your teammates, a clear strategy moving into moving zones, and how you want to play high ground. Additionally, on high ground, you're going to be able to eliminate multiple dimensions. There's not going to be teams above you or to your left or right. All you really have to worry about are the teams below you, and if you can effectively pressure them and force them downwards, you will have a very easy win. Low ground can be very chaotic and super simple at times. The problem is you really don't know which is which. The best piece that you can do is control your entire tarp and layer and stay ahead of zone. That's going to be the best way to succeed as a low ground player. Because you can't really use your mobility, you're not going to be able to have drastic changes in movement unless, like we see here, there's peppers which allow you to move much faster. If you stay low ground, again, you're limiting a dimension that you have to worry about. There's not going to be players below you, and you're going to have the ability to sneak through some old builds and different layers that other people would not have. Additionally, you'll be able to save some mats, right? Since you don't have to full tarp, you're going to be able to save some mats on your bottom layer, occasionally the left and right, and sometimes even be able to move fast enough where you don't have to put a top above you. Low ground is much like high ground, where it's going to be high risk, high reward. If you can maintain your composure and your trio throughout the chaos that is low ground, you can essentially make it all the way to the end of the game and then combat the final team for the win. Additionally, with low ground, that is where the scuffed players are going to be. So if you're a full trio in a good spot in the game on low ground, there's going to be some players making desperate plays or just barely trying to hang on that you can take advantage of and also get your game ruined by sometimes. That is part of low ground, and we see players like Chap and Bugha take full advantage of knowing to play the low ground well. So if you're looking to learn more about it, I would suggest studying those two in a certain degree. Mid ground is going to be all about sticking together as a trio, tunneling or tarping, and grabbing the builds around you as efficiently as possible. You want to have a single focus as a trio to move through these builds, look for eliminations together, look for potential pass together, and you can assign different duties or roles to players, but at the end, everyone needs to be able to step up and make their trio better. Playing mid ground all comes down to finding the right layer and the right pathing. Typically, the front side or the left or right side of moving zones are going to be where you want to play, and we can see this trio doing both of those. Additionally, they're sticking together. You don't want to get more than a box apart from your teammates because there's so much chaos going on. Most of the time, you're going to run into areas where not every build is yours. A good mid-ground layer will include all of your builds, but that is best case scenario. More often than not, you'll run into times where your floor, your wall isn't yours, so you have to stick together, get through those areas quickly, grab what you can, and then look to make plays to win the game late. Like I talked about earlier though, mid ground is going to be a spot where other players' mobility is going to become an issue for you. And if you're not careful, it can ruin your game. So be aware of players on your layer, below you, and above. I know it's not easy, but this is what makes good mid-ground teams, is their awareness and their ability to play together. Here we're going to see Riverson and Illis play high ground. Even though they're just a duo in this trio match, the same rules and techniques still apply. They're going to be able to hold high ground for a good bit, and we'll see a couple of contests, but ultimately they're going to lose this game. If they had a third, they may have won the game. And here's a contest for high ground. These two, Riverson and Illis, have the shockwaves in their back pocket in case something like this happened, and now they're going to be able to quickly retake high ground. And then what we can see is Illis going ahead, playing a split layer from Riverson, and this is going to give them some more security on the high ground, playing these split layers with Illis and Riverson in different parts of the zone. It's also going to increase the number of angles, potential shots, and then pressure that they could put on. Your goal on high ground is to pressure the teams closest to you and make sure that they can't make a potential play for your high ground. And what exactly does that mean? That means finding players on second height and spraying them until you force them to move downward. If you see players starting to split shockwaves below you, that should immediately mean, hey, I need to pressure this team. Unfortunately, this zone is going to go back over high ground and old builds, so it's not going to be as effective for these guys as if high ground and the zones was just moving through an open area. When it goes back over old builds, it's a lot harder to shoot through fully built tarps and layers, so you're not going to get as many elims. These guys are going to definitely walk out of here with numerous number of elims, but not what you would hope for in this position. And we see the effective fire coming through. They're looking for fresh builds to pressure. They're looking for players out in the open, people making mistakes, not having the builds to protect themselves. All those kind of things are key, and we see the builds coming through. Some fresher builds, Riverson is putting pressure on, making sure that no one can make a play. Another team is going to contest high ground, and if they had a third, they might go ahead and be able to combat them, but with only the two of them, they're going to fall to it. And this is the risk reward of playing height, right? If you want to play high ground, you're going to get contested at some point. It's just a matter of when and how. Using those split layers is going to be one option to combat a high ground take. And then also just awareness, general pressure is going to be your best bet. Once you run out of builds, though, it's very hard to play high ground because you have to essentially rely on going back over old builds. You can't build fight someone that's trying to contest you, and more times than not, you're going to wind up going down. And that's it. I know there's a lot more smaller things, but from a general perspective, this is going to be the different techniques, the layers, how you play endgame, and based on your play style, how your trio is, your strengths, your weaknesses, that is how you should decide to play different layers. And it's not always going to be one-dimensional. There are certain times where you're going to be playing multiple layers throughout an end game, and that's all right. Some teams are going to be best off switching layers, going from low to middle to taking height, or playing height when they get contested, dropping down, playing mid again. There's not one specific right way to do it. There's going to be best strategies for your trio based on your skill and, like I said, your strengths and weaknesses. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead, share it, throw me a subscription, like down below, comment what I missed, what was your favorite part, did you learn anything? Thank you guys for watching. My name is Somebody's Gun, and I will see you next time.